Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith. I am here once again with Kat McBerry, but we're not doing the Disney debate or DuckTales or any of our usual things today. Today, we are Crystal Gems because it is time for a show that I've already done one episode of called In Retrospect. In Retrospect is basically a show where I take a look at something that I've either played before or started to watch when I was younger and put down and wanted to give like a second look back at it because a lot of the things that you think you like as a kid or that you liked as a kid may have aged, and I think it's interesting to take a look at how some things have aged over time. In the case of video games, most of these things are stuff that I played when I was a kid, but today is a cartoon that Kat tried to get me to watch years ago. This is a show that she and many other people have been saying, "Oh, you need to see Steven Universe end because it's really, really good and like it's amazing and it's like Adventure Time and like, it only gets better and better and better." Unfortunately, I'm a stubborn old goat, and I don't always listen when people tell me to watch things. So, at first I ignored it, and then Kat showed me a couple episodes. We watched the first 4 episodes, and that's usually enough for me to get an idea of how I feel about a show. And I didn't have a very good first impression with Steven Universe when I first watched it, to be honest. The early episodes in Steven Universe are some that kind of just put me off because I didn't know what direction the show was headed, and I think that was my initial problem. But years down the line, I started thinking about Steven Universe because everyone was talking about it, but also because I'd heard several of the songs from the show. And if there's something that's going to get me into a show more than anything, it's the music. And Steven Universe has that. So I sat down with Kat and we watched the first season. We marathoned the first season, and we decided that we wanted to talk about it, but not in our usual podcast format or not in our usual podcasts, simply because, like, our usual podcasts are structured and have all these things that we normally do, and we've done them for years, and we know what we're talking about. But we've never talked about a cartoon before, and I honestly just really wanted to get my thoughts out about the first season and stuff as we were watching them. Kat and I, we regularly get together and watch anime and cartoons and stuff. And so here we are, we're going to talk and discuss the first season of Steven Universe. So Kat, tell us a little bit about your history with Steven Universe.
My history with Steven Universe is a little bit weird. Like, so I started watching Steven Universe about halfway through season 2. And part of the reason I started watching it was because I'd heard a lot of things about it, not necessarily good things, because at that point I had heard that the Steven Universe fandom had been up in arms, bullying this one artist who apparently drew rose quartz in a different way than they were used to, and they were making a big spectacle out of it. And then even before that, I had heard how like the show had introduced a lesbian couple into it, and people were freaking out about that. So there was all this controversy going on, and I heard about it and I sort of read about it, and I'm thinking to myself, damn, these fans are crazy. I don't want to go near this. But at the same time, there was enough curiosity where I was like looking up clips just to see what all the hullabaloo was about. So I ended up watching a few things out of order. Yeah, my bad. but but yeah, so I watched a few things and I'm like, oh, the animation's not bad. Alright, and this looks interesting enough, and I wonder who this is, and I wonder what they're doing here, so eventually I built up enough curiosity where I'm like, maybe I should watch this, at least first few episodes just to give it a chance. And my brother, who happened to be watching the show from the beginning at the time, he too highly recommended that I watch it. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot, see where it goes. So I started watching from the beginning, and I'll admit at first I wasn't too captivated by it, just because it seemed like one of those generic Monster of the Week type shows, sort of slice of life dealies. But at the same time, I couldn't really stop myself from watching them, because they were short episodes, and there were some funny bits, and there was some good music. And before I know it, I pretty much binge-watched all of Season 1 up to Jailbreak, and I'm like, okay, now I have context. But then I realized there was an underlying mystery going about it. And then I start watching Season 2 when I start seeing clips of another character. And so before I knew it, I had pretty much caught up to the show at that point, which I said was halfway through Season 2, and they had gone on a really long hiatus at that point. So I'm like, you know what? I like this show. I enjoy this show. I'm interested to see where it goes. And then once Season 2 had finally wrapped up, I'm like, okay, I love this show. I definitely love this show, and I've been watching it religiously since. So, unlike you, Zen, I actually am up to date on everything. I've seen up to, at this point in time, the episode Single Pale Rose, just so all you fans out there know where I'm at. So, I know what's coming. Zen does not. So please, for the love of God, none of you spoilers, okay? Because
no spoilers. Anything that's remotely related to like spoilers will be deleted, and you'll be banned for life.
No television for 1,000 years.
If I were to be perfectly honest, I think the thing that really got me into Steven Universe, since I was actually not even into it up until this year, but then Caleb Hyles did a cover of Do It For Her and Stronger Than You. And I had that song stuck in my head for weeks. I was just like, oh my god, this is really, really good. And at first I didn't know it was from Steven Universe, but then I looked and it's like, oh, this is a cover from Steven Universe. It's one of the major songs. And I woke up in the morning one day and I recorded a cover because I was just like, it's one of those things where I get these bursts of creative inspiration and they come from the weirdest places, but you can blame this on and thank Caleb Hyles for this, because I really need to see the show after that. Like, that song drew me in more so than the first 4 episodes of the show did way back when. I can't remember how long it's been. I think it's been like 2 or 3 years since you initially, yeah. And we watched the first, technically the first 2 episodes, although they're split into 2, so the 4 episodes. So we watched Cheeseburger Backpack and we watched Together Breakfast. And then I remember watching 2 other ones as well. And
the first episode, Gem Glow and Laser Light Cannon.
Yes, Gem Glow and Laser Light Cannon with the pork chops are perfect and all that stuff. And I remember liking it, but I think my biggest problem, well, my 2 biggest problems, first of all, is the structure of the episodes. And I have the same problem with Adventure Time. They're 11-minute episodes, and I know that you have to keep the attention of kids, and the audience that it's aimed for is not going to have the huge attention span to watch like very long episodes. But it always really gets to me because this series and Adventure Time and several other series like it shows that they clearly have the ability to write longer episodes or 2-parters or ongoing storylines. And hell, we're going to be talking about that later on in the season. But for those first 4 episodes, nothing seems to be happening there. And it only gets exacerbated because these episodes are short and they're all different. They're all Monster of the Week scenarios. And it very much feels longer than it is because of that structure because of the pacing of it. And this is just like, this is a personal gripe of mine. If you like the 11-minute episode structure, I won't begrudge you that, but I much prefer the 25-minute episode structure that I've gotten used to. And for shows like Adventure Time and Steven Universe, it took me forever to get into them because of those initial seasons, because of those episodes that really didn't seem to have anything to do with each other. And I think the other thing that really threw me off about the show was there really didn't seem to be any direction for where the show was going. And you don't always need that. You don't always need that, but when it has this Monster of the Week formula, something to get me to keep watching is some sort of goal, some sort of reason why things are happening. And like with something like, say, Gravity Falls, and I mention this a lot, but something like Gravity Falls, you can clearly tell there's some sort of end game in sight, even from the very first episode, that intrigues you to keep watching. Like, you need your vending machine moment. You know, the moment in Gravity Falls where he puts the code into the vending machine, and you're waiting for the rest of the season to figure out what's going on. They need that vending machine moment.
Well, they do eventually, halfway through season 1.
Yes. And that's you have to get to that point. And we're going to be talking a little bit later about how things change from the first half to the second half, and what it means plot-wise and structure-wise and pacing-wise, because, to be honest, the second half of the show is really, really good. But before that, Kat, let's run down what the premise of this show is. For anyone who's watching me, I do have some people who watch my show without having watched some of the stuff I'm reviewing. So give it just a brief summary of what the premise of this show is all about.
Sure. So Steven Universe is about a boy named, Steven Universe. He is half human, half gem, who lives with three I hesitate to call them women. They're called crystal gems. They're these magical humanoid aliens from outer space. They look human, but they're not. And they've been protecting the world for thousands of years. And they serve as Steven's guardians. And basically they're training him to, join their group and fight alongside them as they go around fighting these monsters and basically trying to protect the Earth from any threat that might come about. And at first, the show is kind of like a slice of life type dealy, in which they alternate between fighting a monster of the week, and Steven interacting with the townsfolk and his friends and his family and everything. It's not till halfway through the season when you start to realize that there's a bigger thing going on that we don't quite see. Because one of the unique things of this show is that every episode is told from Steven's point of view, with Steven's understanding. So any mystery going on that he doesn't know, we don't know. They drop tons of hints, but again, unless it's made clear to Steven, it's not so much clear to us. So that's really where the big draw of the whole show comes in, because you think it's going to be this cute little thing about this boy who goes and buys donuts or goes to the arcade and he just wants to hang out with the crystal gems and fight all these monsters. But then you realize that there's this underlying mystery regarding his mother, regarding Homeworld and outer space, regarding these other gems that may or may not be evil. There's so much going on, and granted at times it would be a bit frustrating, but at the heart of it all, that's what the big draw of Steven Universe is. Just to joining Steven on his journey, just to find out all the mysteries of the crystal gems and to uncover all the secrets that they have and what's ultimately going to happen to the Earth, as well as everyone in general.
Yeah, the draw is that mystery. The draw is you're going through the mind of a kid, the lens of a child, as he slowly learns that things around you are not what they seem. And And as you slowly learn this, you can actually go back and look at the past episodes and see a lot of the stuff that they really foreshadowed. We'll get into specifics in a bit, but let's talk a little bit about the opening theme song. Now, Steven Universe has some really great music. Unfortunately, and I don't like being harsh on the show, but I didn't initially like the theme song. It felt very short and very abrupt. It was well sung, but it's just like, it's one of those things that it kind of passes by very quickly, and I didn't know what to make of it at first. And I think what the problem is they cut it in half, because when you actually hear the full version of the theme song, it is really, really good. But it just, like, when it's cut to that short length for those 11-minute episodes, for me, it just took me a while to really grow into it. Now I hum it and sing along with it every single episode. But in my case, I just, like, initially, when I was first shown it by you, I was very harsh. I didn't really like it. I don't know. What do you think, Kat?
I thought the opening was perfectly fine. I mean, I've watched other shows with like similar short lengths, like Adventure Time and Star vs. Force of Evil, and their songs are probably about the same length, if not shorter. And I mean, at least the song gets to the point. You know, they say who they are. They're the Crystal Gems. They always save the day, and if you think they can't, they'll always find a way. So, and then they say their names. So I think it's pretty straightforward. And I do agree, I do like the full-length one, where you find out more of their motivations and why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying it's bad. I don't think it was gripping for me, and maybe I've just been spoiled by anime, because anime openings are just, like, these blasts of fantastic, like, rocking music and whatnot, and maybe I'm also... Here's something that possibly could be doing it, too, because... Avatar: The Last Airbender did something like this, where it had a shorter theme that was mostly focused on, like, explaining the world, but it was less trying to be an opening theme song and more presenting the world as it is. Maybe that's why I'm just a little bit jaded. I don't know. I just didn't initially like it. I love it now. I think it's a great theme. I think I still prefer I prefer Star Versus song, to be honest, and that's another show that I need to watch and we need to talk about on the show. But I'm sorry, but I think the opening theme song is probably the weakest song on the show.
It's a cute little jingle. I mean, it's not meant to be this big epic thing, because the show doesn't exactly start off big and epic. It's, you know, just these people, like, doing their everyday thing, which, you know, in this context really is not that big a deal. It's just what they do.
That's true. It does represent the show. Like, I can't begrudge it many things. For some reason, when I first heard it, I was just not really pulled in. The ending theme song, on the other hand, the ending theme song is fantastic. I love it. I know I've heard it somewhere before, though. Like, it feels so familiar to me.
Well, I put it on a CD for you.
Well, yeah, that could be it too. But
yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. With the ending song, they actually they keep extending it as the seasons progress, because, like, you only hear, like, of the first few lines in the first season, but then every time there's, like, an additional season or something big happens, they keep adding additional lines. So if you go online now, you can finally hear the full-length version, because I think it took up till recently for them to release the full song. But I think that's pretty cool, because I think there's supposed to be, like, an underlying message in it, or it's supposed to be referring to something. But either way, it's still a really pretty song, and it's sung by Rebecca Sugar, the creator of the show, and she's great when it comes to music.
Oh yeah, like, I really love this song. I honestly love the message behind the song. I think it's brilliant. Honestly, every time I hear it, I'm happy. Like, it's laid back, but at the same time it's melancholy and upbeat. I don't know. It's one of those things that is very hard to describe, but I get a very happy feeling when I listen to it. So let's talk a little bit about these characters. Now, obviously we should start with the titular character, Steven, who is a very young boy. Again, he's half gem, half human, and he pretty much interacts with everything as a child would. He behaves very, very young, and from what I've seen of this first season, I'm wondering how his age is going to affect things, because the thing that we learn in season 1 is that the gems are literally just, gemstones that are magic, and they can project physical forms from their gems. So we see, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, they all create their physical forms from the gem, and when they get hurt, they turn back into their gem forms. Steven has a gem, therefore he also has gem powers, which means that his age and how he views things affects how he looks. Not all the time, but there is one episode, a very freaky episode, where he starts thinking that he's too old for birthdays, and he starts to fluctuate between different ages. And so I'm wondering, as the show goes on, if as he starts acting older, is his appearance going to change with his gem? I don't know.
I'm like biting my fist right now because
Yeah, don't say anything. I'm just speculating here, but from what I'm seeing right now, he acts like a very young kid. I don't know if I want to say he acts his age, because he definitely looks a little bit older than some of the things he's into. But then again, he also never went to school, so it's very hard to pinpoint ages. Have they officially stated their ages?
Yes, they've stated Steven's age, but again, I'm not spoiling that.
Okay, so that's the thing, that these are the things I notice. But yeah, so we don't know his age. He acts very young. He acts very naive, but at the same time, he's very capable. He's a very strong-willed individual, and in a lot of instances, he's the one who helps out the crystal gems more so than they do. And these gems are thousands of years old. Like, these are very old people. They're old to the point where human customs kind of don't mean much to them. Although they're not quite to the same level of like the characters in Ancient Magus Bride, where they're so old that they don't give a shit. These characters actually care. And like, I think the main thing I like about Steven personally is I like how willing he is to help and protect everyone, even the characters who we initially don't like. He always is there to go in, jump in, and protect people. And I think more than anything else, more than some of his faults, which we'll get into, I like that he's such a selfless character. And it really, despite some of the problems that we'll talk about, I think that's what I really latched onto with Steven.
Yeah, I like Steven too, although admittedly I did find him annoying at first because he seemed to be your typical titular, like, annoying happy-go-lucky main character, like think SpongeBob or Flapjack or someone like that, because, it's like they're so, like, happy and upbeat that even when people are intentionally being rude to him or, visibly being annoyed by him or putting him down, like, he doesn't notice. He's just like, oh, well, that's just swell, and just continues about his business. Like, I thought it was going to be one of those cases, but then as the episodes go on, you see he does end up forming a more serious side because he realizes this shit is life or death, and there are real consequences to his actions. So you see he does end up learning some lessons from his mistakes. I think the moment for me where I realized that I was starting to like him more as a character, that I thought he was breaking away from that archetype, was the episode Lars and the Cool Kids. Because up to that point, whenever he interacted with Lars, like, Lars clearly doesn't like him, because, like me, I found him annoying with his upbeat attitude. So, in that episode, Lars is also being particularly annoying, because he's trying to, fit in with the cool kids, so he's acting all obnoxious and fake and everything. And then when they end up getting in trouble and Steven's doing his best to save them, Lars chews him out saying, "Oh, this is all your fault because your friends and their magic BS and it's all your mother's fault." And as soon as he mentioned his mother, and like Steven like visibly gets angry and he's like, "What do you know about my mom? I never knew my mom." And I'm like, "Ooh, burn."
Ooh, yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, that's what
Yeah.
I want to see." Because I wanted to see like some genuine like anger, genuine like emotion from somebody who's like ragging on him just for being associated with a group of magical beings. So from that point forward, I started to like Steven a lot more.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that assessment, because my main issue from the very beginning wasn't that he was annoying, it was he acted too childish for my liking. Not in the sense that, being childish is bad, because there's something to be gained from childish wonder, but there was a lot of times where I felt he just did the wrong thing. He behaved in a certain way, or he didn't ask questions that he should have, because he acted like a very young kid, and sometimes that annoyed me a bit, and to the point where, like, I didn't hate him, but I kind of wished that the crystal gems were the focus at the time. For example, in Cheeseburger Backpack, like, it's a fun episode. There's a lot of stuff happening, but there's clearly more stuff going on, and Steven just doesn't ask very important questions about, like, where they're going, why they're going there, that, all could have helped him out on the trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like any chance for him to learn about like gem culture or his gem heritage, he kind of just glosses over or straight up ignores. And I found that kind of infuriating, especially since later on that stuff kind of becomes important.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think like the most like aggravated I became with him was in the episode Serious Steven, where he brings a ukulele along the mission for no reason other than he felt like it. And it ends up like proving a hindrance because again it's just he's lugging it around for no good reason, and at one point he almost gets crushed by something and Garnet's trying to like hold it back like and get him out of the way, and he's just like, "Oh, I feel like playing a song," and he starts strumming it. I'm like, dude, you're about to die. Time and place.
I think what really annoyed me the most, the episode where I really was just like, was Frybo.
Oh, that was a horrifying episode.
Yeah, to be fair, there are some disturbing episodes in the show, and we'll talk about them a little bit later on. Frybo is a bad episode. Not just because of the whole, like, Fry character or whatnot, but because if he had just listened from the very beginning to what Pearl was saying about how the gem shard that she was trying to find was living and caused problems, that would, all of this could be prevented. Because he finds out that the gem shard can be placed into clothing and operate as like kind of like independently. So he eventually finds it in his pants. What does he do? Well, he finds out his pants are moving. So he puts the gem shard into the Fry mascot costume, Frybo. And instead of listening to Pearl, which he completely ignores the whole conversation, we don't even hear any of the conversation about the people who were slaughtered in a massacre of gem shard powered clothing. He puts it in the Frybo costume, and the Frybo costume starts turning into this monstrosity that is. It's Cthulhu-esque. It is disturbing.
Ugh.
And the whole time, I'm just like, Steven, what Why? You could have prevented this whole thing.
So it was kind of reminding me of like a Fairly Odd Parent episode in which like Timmy deliberately like does not listen to like Cosmo or Wanda when they tell him not to do the thing because it'll cause bad things to happen. But of course he doesn't listen and the bad thing happens. And you'd think he'd learn his lesson the first time, but he just consistently does it like all the time, making you think he's like a sociopath. So that's what it kind of reminded me of a bit.
Yeah, it's annoying is what it is. It's annoying because as an audience member, obviously I'm not the demographic that they're trying to get into, but I can still watch most of these episodes and be like, all right, I can understand the mindset of what's going on. As a kid, I probably wouldn't have too much problem with the episode because I probably would have had fun, just with the rest of it. But the biggest issue is just the way he interacts with stuff, the way he just doesn't listen. And then, in order to solve the problem, he gets more gem shards into more pieces of clothing. And I'm just like, how is that a solution? How is the problem that you created solved by creating the same problem?
Although it was admittedly funny. Underwear, go! It's like, ew.
I don't know, like, early Steven kind of annoyed me. And it wasn't until, like, a little bit later on that I was really starting to get behind him because he started to grow and change and his powers started to manifest. And I think the more that he interacted with new characters, the better he became. But the person who I've always really loved is Greg Universe. Kat, do you want to take it away with Mr. Universe? Do you want to talk about the universe?
Oh, nobody can ignore the universe. Yeah, so I really like Greg Universe a lot. And it's weird because when they first introduced him, the way the gems are making him sound, like, you'd think he's going to be like a deadbeat dad or something, but that's actually not the case at all. Because, granted, he's not, like, the most successful, like, person. He's not, like, not exactly an idol per se. Like, he's basically a guy, a musician, who, lives out of his van and works at a car wash and has a storage unit full of junk. So, he's kind of, like, perceived as a deadbeat. But as you see in later episodes, he, like, really does care about his son a whole lot. And I think part of that is because, Steven is basically the reincarnation of his mother, Rose Quartz. So because, Greg and Rose got along so well, Greg and Steven get along really well. And it, like, at times you'd think they were more friends than they are father and son. But regardless, I think Greg is, like, an awesome dad. There are times where he does, he does some things that are questionable, like the whole episode where he faked his broken leg. But other than that, he does his best to help out Steven and the gems, although he does keep his distance from the gems just because he knows that they deal with, like, this big stuff and he doesn't want to get in the way of that. And you do see he goes out of his way to, like, make sure that Steven is safe, like, even if it, like, puts himself in danger. But at the same time, he has his limits. He does what he can, and he's basically like dad goals, pretty much. Like, he's a single dad trying to raise a half-alien son and doing the best that he can with what he has at his disposal. And you can't help but like him for that.
Yeah, Greg Universe is a great dad. He may not be quite as good as All Might, because All Might is probably, like, the best dad I've ever seen. But
nobody can beat Dad Might.
Nobody can beat Dad Might. But I think what I like about Greg Universe is that he is a relatable character. He's a human. He's an ordinary, average guy. He's a musician. In his spare time, he writes songs, and he has some really, really great songs. But when he's not writing songs, he's running the car wash and he's looking after his son, and he always cares. He knows he can't be there all the time because he's just not physically strong enough to do all the things that the gems are capable of doing. But at the same time, he always, like, if there's something that he can do, he goes in. In the aforementioned episode where he faked an injury to be more with his son, he saves the day with duct tape.
I do like that duct tape somehow fixed that giant, like, magical, like, orb thingy. It's like, duct tape really can fix anything.
Either that or like was also being plugged up with the spit and we didn't know about it. Like, it's kind of vague about certain things because later on we find out that Steven has healing powers, like healing spit basically, and he uses that to heal like his father and a few other things, and he uses it on the gem. Now we think that he, because he lost his confidence, it's not working, but my theory is that it was working slowly. It was just a very, very broken gem, and so it took a while to heal. I don't know if that's correct. It's just a theory because we don't get confirmation on that.
We'll get back to Steven's healing powers later.
Yeah, we'll get back to that later. But Mr. Universe is a character who I can really get behind. He's not the most powerful. He's not the most, well-rounded character. He's just a good person. And, the episodes where he talk about his backstory, he has this flashback where he tells how he met Steven's mother and everything that happened there, where he used to be a musician on the road. Unfortunately, he had a horrible manager that was taking all of his profits. And while Greg had all this talent, it was being wasted until he found the woman of his dreams. And while he's not the most successful person in the world, I mean, just, you gotta let him drive his van into your heart, Yeah,
it's actually kind of like heartbreaking a bit that the gems don't really see him the way that everyone else does. Like, everyone else sees him as like this nice guy, a fun guy to hang around with, which he is, but at the same time they like keep their distance from him, which later on you realize it's understandable, but it's kind of disheartening that they treat him as like such a deadbeat when it's like the guy's doing the best that he can, and there are some things that he can do that they can't. So especially like, I mean, was it like they show his whole relationship with Amethyst and how they were once close, but Amethyst got too clingy and ended up pushing Greg away. You see that he had friction with Pearl from the get-go because of her relationship with Rose, and Garnet I don't think really had any beef with Greg per se, just she didn't have much faith in him in terms of his abilities. Like, it's just kind of disheartening in that regard, because it's like, I kind of understand. I could understand like Steven probably being disappointed by all that too, because I mean, people who have parents that don't get along or step parents that don't get along, it's frustrating. So, and seeing this was kind of frustrating for me too. But I mean, we'll see more of their relationship later down the line. I don't want to spoil anything in that regard.
Yeah, I kind of want to see things naturally, but from what I have seen, Greg is one of my favorite characters, and I love his voice. My favorite song in the first season is Just a Comet. It's the one he performs on stage to the crowd of just one rose quartz. And we have decided for this episode that we're going to have musical interludes just like the show. So I am going to take it over to my past self as I do a cover, an a cappella cover of Just a Comet. Take it away, Future Zen. Some say I have no direction, that I'm a light speed distraction, but that's a knee-jerk reaction. Still, this is the final frontier. Everything is so clear. To my destiny I steer. This life in the stars is all I've ever known. Stars and stardust in infinite space is my only home. But the moment that I hit the stage, thousands of voices are calling my name. And I know in my heart that it's been worth it all of the while. And as my albums fly off of the shelves, handing out autograph pics of myself, this life I chose isn't easy, but sure is one heck of a ride. At the moment that I hit the stage, I hear the universe calling my name. And I know deep down in my heart that I have nothing to fear. And as the solar wind blows through my hair, knowing I have so much more left to share, wandering spirit who's tearing its way through the cold atmosphere. I fly like a comet, soar like a comet, crash like a comet. I'm just a comet. Good job.
It's funny because I saw at one of the panels for Steven Universe, Greg's voice actor, Tom Sharpling, I think it is. He mentioned that whenever he has to sing a song as Greg, it takes him like a week to like warm up his voice so it sounds decent for like the songs he has to sing, because he apparently doesn't have that much faith in himself. Which is weird because he is a good singer. Like,
he is a good singer.
Like, it's not like fantastic. Like some of the other songs you'll hear later down the line, sung by people with singing backgrounds, are really good. But even so, I think he does a fantastic job, especially with the Comet song.
Yeah, like that song just inspires me in the same way that Stronger Than You inspired me, because like just the visuals sell this song. The way everything is like, the solar winds moving through his hair, and like the way it's shooting up to the stars. And even without the context of what the song is about, just hearing the song for the first time, I'm like, oh my god, I love it. I love that song, and I think that's him at his best. I think he has a really great voice, and I don't think he gives himself enough credit. But then again, people who do have deep voices like myself, sometimes like we get a bad rap because like I think what people want nowadays in terms of voices is they want range, and I'm sorry, but my voice ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, well,
my deep bass ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, like I used to be like a soprano one back in my high school days, but unfortunately, I went through like college age puberty, and my voice ended up deepening a bit, so I had to like make up for the loss of the higher octave by going an octave lower when I sing. So yeah, win some, lose some, it happens.
I used to be very high pitched. Like I got mistaken on the phone for my mother. Which, I mean, on the one hand, that would help with things going on in my life right now. On the other hand, I do kind of like my voice, because it is very much a voice fit for radio, and I love it. With that being said, let us move on to the crystal gems themselves. The crystal gems are really interesting characters, and the more I learn about them, the more I'm like, there is so much shit behind the scenes that I want to know about, and I'm like, damn. Damn.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we start with perhaps the least, the character that's not the least defined, but that we learned kind of the least about, and that would be Amethyst. She is a character who is pretty much a slob. She is a fun-loving, just wild kind of gem. And we do learn a little bit about her past later on in the season, but it's aside from like a few episodes, her character doesn't develop all too much. She is a character who just loves to have a lot of fun. She loves to roughhouse. I mean, there's an entire episode where she sneaks away from the rest of the gems to wrestle, to secretly wrestle as the Purple Puma, and she, along with Steven, who becomes Tiger Millionaire, become wrestlers, and it is some of the best. It is one of the best episodes in the entire show because they just have all these wrestling gimmicks. And Tiger Millionaire is the biggest heel. Like, they're heels. And Amethyst loves it because she can be herself and no one gets mad at her for hitting things and for being wild. And Steven likes it because he gets to act. Although he goes a little bit too far with his heelery, and when asked for an autograph, he's just like, you couldn't afford it.
I do like that. And that's not the last we'll see of Tiger Millionaire either.
Nice. So like, yeah, that episode really serves to show who Amethyst really is, and she pretty much maintains that throughout most of the show, where she's this wild character who just wants to be herself. She's a little bit of a slob, she's a little bit unkempt, but in her own way she's sexy, and in her own way she's a very put together character. But they do explore it in one of the later episodes where we find out that she's not actually created on another planet. She wasn't technically born outside, like the rest of the gems are from Homeworld. She was actually grown in a kindergarten, which at first glance, that sounds like, oh, hey, it's a kindergarten. Like, what could possibly be bad about that? Well, it turns out that there are places where, on Earth, where gems were made long ago, and these are not good gems. These were a bunch of wild gems that were manufactured to fight against the crystal gems, and we see thousands upon thousands of holes where these gems were created in broken machinery, and she brings Steven to her old home, and her home is a hole. She was just created in a hole, and she goes through a lot of really deep emotional turmoil because she didn't want to, like, she basically didn't ask to be created. And now she feels like everyone views her as a mistake, and her wild nature is viewed as something negative because of the way she was created. And there's some really great character exploration in this one episode. I think it's one of the better episodes.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much because we do explore more of that aspect of her character in future seasons. But it's not just the fact that, she was created in the kindergarten to fight against the gems. It's also the fact that it's also the way she was made and the way she came out. That's more the issue. Because if you notice with all the other holes, they're all like twice as big as her hole was. And when we see the Homeworld gems come to Earth, particularly Jasper, he calls her an overcooked runt. So, that kind of like adds into her character a bit, is the fact that she's not supposed to be your typical Amethyst. And I think that kind of causes her to have, insecurity issues and a poor portrayal of how she sees herself. Because she always is like, laughing and goofing around and making light of the situation. And I think that's kind of a ruse to kind of cover up her more like self-loathing aspects of herself. So, yeah, so like I said, you find out a lot more in later seasons in that regards. But for now, I mean, I did like that episode on the run where we finally find out, her origin in that regard. It was really heavy, and like I did actually cry the first time I saw it because you see how like
Oh yeah.
torn up she is about the fact that she's like this and that it's not something she asked for, and the fact that she believes that the other gems view her as an abomination when, she really isn't, but she believes that's how they view her. I mean, I've heard theorists like analyze that episode and her character and stuff, and they equate the way she was made and the way she turned out as a child who was conceived in a bad relationship or as a result of like sexual assault, or someone who was born with a disability or something like that. And yeah, when you think about it in that regards, it's pretty heavy.
So yeah, let's move on to Pearl, who is another character that we learn we do get a bit more about, but she's more defined as a mother figure. She's very much the one who's in charge of protecting Steven, and she's pretty much a neat freak, and she's always like graceful and all about balance and all this other stuff. But when it comes right down to it, she could kick everyone's asses. And at first, I was not too big a fan of Pearl because she was always, nagging them to do the right thing and very much like that motherly touch. At the same time, what I liked about her character is that she's very steadfast in who she is, and out of all of these characters, she's the one who comes in to save the day more often than not for like physically, because that's more Garnet's territory, but she pretty much knows the right thing that needs to be done and does it. I'm trying to remember, did Jasper say defective Pearl?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I unfortunately can't go into what that means because that would spoil some things you find out in later seasons.
Okay, but we do learn that she was very much in love with Rose. Rose Quartz was her confidant, the person that she could tell anything to, and very much it feels like the love that she had for Rose is being projected onto Steven with how much she protects him. There's two episodes that I really want to allude to with this. Is that there's one where he's trying to sleep and Lion keeps trying to tell him something by having him like enter his mane, and there's stuff going on there. But Pearl shows up and she's like, oh wait, I was watching you while I like to watch you while you're sleeping, which is kind of creepy.
Just a little.
When taken in context, but one wonders if that's something to do with her protective nature of him, or something to do with Rose Quartz, because she seems very protective of Steven. There's another episode, one that you actually referenced on a past podcast that we did, and I didn't have any context for it, but it's where they're building a rocket ship, and she wants to get off. She wants to get off this planet because they have basically all the warps have been destroyed. So she really wants to show Steven the stars and everything that she and Rose Quartz and Garnet were able to see. And so she builds this rocket ship and almost gets out of the atmosphere, but it starts breaking up. And she brings Steven along against Greg's protests. And she's just like, we're almost there, like, we can get it, I can see the stars. And Steven is just like, you gotta know when to bail. But it's just like, he's the only one she brought along in that trip.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's understandable because, they've been stuck on Earth for like thousands of years, and I will say this much, Pearl was in space, and she did travel around space, so it's understandable she would be homesick. So
it is. I think the key point, though, is that she only brought Steve in. She didn't ask Garnet or Amethyst to go with her, if anything.
Like I said, there's a lot I want to say, but I can't. Like I said, it would clear up so much of this, but I can't. I'm sorry. It's just, let's put it this way. Like, Pearl is a very mysterious, very deeply complex character. And it doesn't seem that way in the beginning, but as you find out more of her relationship with Rose Quartz, her relationship with Greg, her interactions later on with Amethyst and Garnet and Steven, like, they bring out more things in her, both positive and negative, and some of it has some real lasting consequences. Like, the one story for Steven where we see the back story on how Greg met Rose, like, that's not the only type of episode we're gonna see. Like, there are multiple past episodes, and they explain a lot. So, like I said, there's a lot I want to say, but I can't. I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, I wonder if a lot of my speculations are right, because there are these things that I notice, and there's a lot of foreshadowing in this show. So,
well, let's put it this way: the episode Rose's Scabbard, when Steven reveals that he's had Rose's sword this whole time, and Pearl realizes that Lion once belonged to Rose and has all these things that Pearl owned, and that she was basically kept in the dark about a lot of things that Rose did. And she kind of hints to, what happened back in the day, how she joined Rose's rebellion and everything. Yeah, when you see future episodes, that puts that episode into a lot of context.
Okay. So yeah, that's Pearl. She's somewhat mysterious, motherly figure. Then we have Garnet.
Oh, Garnet. I love Garnet. She's my favorite in the first season.
She has a lot of these moments, and the thing is, she is always very stoic. She's the strong, silent type, like really strong. She's the strongest out of all three of them. Because, and this is a spoiler.
Spoiler.
So, if you've been listening up until this point, I've tried to avoid major spoilers, but this is a spoiler for the end of season 1. Garnet is a gem fusion. And we learn throughout the season that gems can fuse together to create new physical forms. For example, Amethyst and Pearl fuse together to make Opal, although they don't do it very often because they can't keep the form for very long because their personalities don't mesh. Your personalities have to be in sync. And Pearl and Amethyst are kind of like at odds most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when Garnet and Amethyst fuse, it becomes unstable and turns into this Nicki Minaj. Sugalite, who is pretty much just this arrogant, like, incredibly powerful, strong gem, which makes sense because Garnet is super strong and Amethyst is super obnoxious. So
plus, she's technically a 3-part fusion.
Yes. But yeah, so Garnet is a fusion of 2 gems that we haven't seen much of, Ruby and Sapphire. 2 gems that we only briefly see at the very final episode of season 1. But they're a fusion of 2 characters. And this is the big mystery for a lot of the show, where throughout, like, she's always wearing these glasses that obscure her eyes. She doesn't have 2, she has 3. And so the fusion of them together gives her 3 eyes, allows her to have this thing called future sight, which she explains as she can see possible futures and steer the course to a certain possible future. And so she's the one who senses when things are happening. She knows when Steven's in danger. She knows when a monster is attacking. And she's the one who comes in and saves the day. And at first she seems like stoic and emotionless. She, doesn't say too much. But whenever Steven's in need, she's there, and she always has some really funny moments. But the big moment for her was when Steven and his friend Connie fuse. Now, nobody knew that a human and a gem could fuse because obviously you need a gem to fuse. But Steven and Connie fused into this form called Stevani, and I'll talk about Connie later. But yeah, they fused together, and the other gems are kind of worried because they never knew this could happen. And Garnet grins. She smiles for the first time in the show. For the first time, this big ass grin. And I'm just like, I really love her. Like, she has some really, like, funny moments where, like, she'll give the thumbs up, like, and stuff like that. And she's such a good mother to Steven because, like, there's one episode where it's a filler episode where Steven comes in and, she's like, how was your day? And Steven's like, oh, how was your day? So she's like, why don't you tell me what you think I was up to all day? And basically, while he's riding on top of her big afro, Steven is explaining what he thinks happened to her on her adventures throughout the day, which is pretty much like a Dragon Ball Z parody episode. But by the end of the episode, she's just like, yeah, that's what happened. She's a great mother. I love how she interacts with Steven. I think she's a great role model. Now, before we get into later stuff that like talks about her character and her fusion, what do you think, Kat?
Oh, Garnet's definitely my favorite character in the first season. Like, it's just so weird because like she's so stoic and she's so serious and so disciplined and everything. You think she'd be hard to like, but like she has like this great deadpan delivery when it comes to these jokes, and she acts so motherly and so concerned with Steven. And there are times where like you wonder if she genuinely is like gonna be mad and like like take it out on him, but everything she does is like, surprisingly like cool and calculated, which makes sense considering she has future vision. But I mean, other than that, she's just a lot of fun because like she's not against doing human things. Because I know like whenever Steven tries to involve the gems with doing human stuff, they either misinterpret it or they just write it off altogether. And while Garnet, doesn't exactly always get involved, at the same time, she does like to humor Steven because she does want to ultimately make him happy. And I do like seeing their interactions together. I think Future Vision was the one, I think, that really defined their relationship because she up to that point, we had no idea she had that ability, and she took a big risk in actually telling Steven about this. And she did it under the belief that if she did, they would grow closer. But unfortunately, it would cause Steven to go through a lot of emotional turmoil in the process. And she even acknowledges her mistake at towards the end. But she did it for a good reason, and I really like that.
And they do become really close after that. And I love how she always humors his ideas. Whenever he has an idea where Pearl is too saying like, oh no, that's not going to work, she's like, humor him. Try it.
Yeah, I do like that because Pearl's probably like the most like paranoid out of all of them in terms that she doesn't really like doing human stuff. She doesn't really trust a lot of like Steven's ideas and believes that like they're too childish or too immature, that they're not going to work out. Like, Garnet at least is willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because she knows that the only way for him to grow is to, give him room to make mistakes so he can learn from them. So I am glad that, because like you said, Garnet is best mom. And I gotta say, so, the funniest moments in season 1, come from her. I love the phone call when Connie tries to pass her off as Steven's mom. I love that whole exchange. She puts her on the phone and she's like, yes, hello, this is Mom Universe. Yes, the children are playing with swords. Sorry, playing with swords. They're bleeding. Oh no, they're dead. Don't call here again. It's like she's like, sorry, I panicked, and I'm like, you have future vision. You did that on purpose.
I love her so much. I love her funky flow. Like when there was an episode where she heard a song on the radio she didn't like, and she rolls out of the car.
She fucking rolls out of the car. I love that.
I just love how in tune with like the beat she is, and then she has an episode where she plays this game called Meat Beat Master, which is a parody of DDR. And because of Future Vision, like this is a lead into Future Vision, she basically cannot lose, and Steven has to break the machine in order to free her because like she's just caught in that trap.
Yeah. Although, like I said, in terms of the mystery of like her being a fusion, I do remember like I said, I can't come into the fandom like halfway through season 2 at this point, so I had already known that she was a fusion. From what I heard with the fandom, there was like a big debate on whether or not she actually was a fusion, because there was a lot of hints pointing toward it. Like you said, the fact that she had a third eye, that she had 2 gems, that she was stronger than the other 2. There's like more subtler ones, like the fact that in Steven's band she plays a guitar, fusion of a piano and a guitar.
Oh, and I remember when we first watched, I think it was Together Breakfast, she opened the door and you said something about it foreshadowing something, and I was watching.
Yeah, the fact that on the door there's like 5 gems, and you know that one is pearls, one is amethyst, and the top one is rose, but then you have the bottom 2, which is red and blue, and she uses both her hands to open them, indicating that, you know, there's Ruby and Sapphire's room. Although I believe it's just one room at this point, considering they're always fused.
That makes sense.
And there's also the fact that when they were talking about fusion and how complicated and hard it was, and she's like, it's always been easy for me. And I'm like, ah.
I also really like there's another thing when Steven and Connie fuse, where she's just like, you're not one person, you're not 2 people. You're an experience. Now go have fun. And that's one of my favorite quotes from her.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of subtext for LGBT in this show, in that episode in particular. But, like she keeps dropping these hints about who she really is. And later, when Jasper comes in, she gets defused. And we don't know it at the time, but she gets pretty much ripped into 2. And later we find out, like, she's always been 2 gems fused together that seem to really love each other. And when they have the final fight in the spaceship, she sings Stronger Than You. And granted, I had heard this song as the first thing that really got me intrigued in the show. Now I have more context. And the fact that, you know, she's made of love, 2 people fused together that really love each other and that want to stay fused. And it just, like, the big thing to me is that she says in the song, can't you see that my relationship is stable? And she's the one gem fusion that never breaks apart in the show because of their losing concentration or whatever. They're just 2 people who are so in love with each other that they can stay fused.
Although I will note, you don't really see it, but I've seen people do screenshots of it. In the episode Fusion Cuisine, when the 3 of them fuse together to form Alexandrite, when they start to like lose it and break apart, and you see them start to defuse, if you freeze frame a shot, you actually do see Ruby and Sapphire's like silhouette like briefly defusing, only to fuse right back together before hitting the ground.
Wow.
I know, right?
I had noticed whenever they fused, there were 2 gems. And obviously there are 2 gems in her hands, but that's kind of what got me thinking about it. We don't really know too much about Ruby and Sapphire at this point, because we only just learned about them at the end of season 1. But I love Garnet as a character. I think she gets the most cool moments. Not just the badass moments, but just the fun little segments. Like, like cutaway gags, things that like take a second, but she has these really great moments, and I love her.
Yeah, and don't worry, we will get to learn more about Ruby and Sapphire in future episodes. Like they do get moments to shine, and there are some things in regards to Garnet being a fusion. So, like one thing I do love in terms of fusion with this show is that fusion is more defined by, the relationship and, the two people interacting with each other, as beings. Like, cause for example, a show like Dragon Ball Z, they do have fusion in there, but it's more of two characters having the same power level, being able to combine said powers, just purely for fighting purposes. In this, while they do fuse to, do bigger jobs or to, win fights more easily, you do see that there are other reasons to fuse, and that the fusion doesn't like end once the battle's done. Like certain characters actually can and do stay fused for like a long time depending on how deep the relationship is, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really do like that. In that same regard, we should talk about Connie, because Connie's the other main character. Now, like there are some other minor characters in the show. There's obviously Lion, who is a pet that they find on one of their missions, who turns out to be Rose's pet lion. And we don't know too much about Lion. There are other people in the town, but the real big main character is Connie, who becomes Steven's friend after one day. Like, she stumbles upon the beach and all this strange stuff that's happening there, and she gets stuck in a protection bubble with Steven. And after that experience, they become really, really good friends, and they start confiding in each other, to the point where, like, it's... I don't want to say relationship, because, again, I don't really know how old they are. But they form a very strong bond together. They tell each other everything. They go to the movies together. They have a lot of fun times together. And I really like Connie. I think she's one of my favorite characters in the show, because she's another one that's ordinary. Like, there's nothing too special about her. I mean, she's a nerd. She wears glasses. She has parents that are overprotective of her. And she is just one of those characters who you would probably write off in other series, but she's very practical, and she's very headstrong, and she wants to help out. And whenever Steven's in trouble, she always helps out as well.
Yeah, I definitely like Connie. Like, it's weird because you would think that she would just be, the love interest, someone that is just there, just for Steven to fawn over. And granted, he does obviously have a crush on her, but the crush ends up becoming like a real true friendship, and I believe the attraction is mutual for them, that they both do genuinely like each other, but they have like, it's a nice little in between where they're not really dating, but they're still like really close friends. Like, because how else would they have been able to fuse otherwise? So
Yeah.
and I do really sympathize with Connie a lot. The fact that she's pressured to succeed by her parents, who are like so overbearing and protective. Like, she has to hide all these aspects about Steven because she's afraid that with him being so different and having an unorthodox upbringing, that it'll cause her parents to like freak out and keep her away from him. Like, I can understand all that, but at the same time, like, it kind of sucks that she kind of like lets her parents dictate all those aspects of her life. Although she does have more character growth in terms of that in season 2, and she does deal with the issues of her parents eventually. And granted, her parents aren't exactly the worst. Like, they are, of course, overbearing, but they do it out of love, and you see they do genuinely care for her safety. So yeah, it's not like they're abusive or anything, which is nice.
Yeah, they're good people, and I think the best episode, a part of this started when Steven finds out that he has healing powers. He heals her eyes, and she takes off her glasses, takes out the glass portion, like pokes them out of the frame and puts her glasses back on, because obviously now she can see, but she doesn't want her parents to know because like it's pretty much a miracle that her eyes are cured. And then I think one of the following episodes was when her parents wanted to meet Steven's parents. So what does Steven do? Basically, he has all the gems fused together so that they could have one mom and Greg.
God, that was so stupid.
That's another example of how naive Steve can be sometimes, but it was still a funny episode, and I do like what they were doing with that. Honestly, my favorite Connie episode, though, right now is, there are two. One is the Stevani episode where like they have this really beautiful romantic moment, and they start dancing on the beach, and they fuse because they're so in sync, and it feels like they're in love. And they fuse together, and they go out dancing, and they have a fantastic time. But they find out that the club where they wanted to dance is full of people who they don't want to be associated with. So they defuse, but they ended up just having a fun time anyway. And like the Stevani episode is great.
Yeah, and luckily we'll get to see more Stevani in the future, and she herself actually does get some character development, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the episode where they both enter Rose's room. Earlier in the show, we are introduced to this room that Rose Quartz has that can pretty much grant you your wish, but it can get freaky if you try to tell it to do too much at once. So Steven brings her in there so they can act out the plot of this book that they both really like. And it shows like there's hints that especially in this episode, that Steven has real feelings for her. And there's a point near the end of the episode where he starts to blurt something out, and I thought he was going to say, "I love you." Granted, it's a kid's show. I don't know if they would actually do that, but there was a misunderstanding that they had where he was basically hiding the fact that he liked the ending of the book, even though she didn't, and he hid it and lied because he wanted to keep their friendship alive, because like he honestly wanted, like they both loved this book series and he wanted to respect that.
Yeah, I can understand in that regards, because stuff like that can tear apart friendships, unfortunately.
In any other TV show, this would have been the moment where they started falling out, where they're just like, oh, you lied about this, you really like this, you don't like this, blah, 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 blah. But Connie respects him for it. It's like, no, I like how schmaltzy you are. That it represents you, and Connie respects his opinion. And that's what really made me love Connie's character. Like, I love her in general, and I think she has some really great tenets to her. But she's always so respectful of other people, and I really like that.
Well, we see that she is brought up to be respectful, given how, she calls her parents, like, sir and ma'am and everything, and she does the same to everybody else. So, I can understand in that regards. I do like how she kind of brings, like, a normalization to Steven's, like, childhood. Because, again, like, he never went to school, he never experienced, like, a lot of things that other kids experience growing up, and Akane, I think, kind of, like, compensates for that by introducing him to certain things. Like, you'll see more in later seasons, but I do think she's a really nice balance to him and all of the magical, like, chaos and junk that he deals with in his life.
Mm-hmm. So those are the main characters. There are a lot of side characters. Probably too many to go into right now. Like, obviously, there's not too many people in the town. There's Mayor Dewey, who's kind of a jerk, and his kids. There's the cool kids. There's Lars, who's a dick, and I hate him. Basically, he's a kid who works at the donut shop, and basically he's Robbie from Gravity Falls. He's a character that has no redeeming qualities, and there's just a lot of things that I don't like about him. There's his on-again, off-again girlfriend. There are
kind of not really girlfriend. It's more like she wants to be his girlfriend, but he, doesn't really consider her that way.
And he's a dick.
It's more like he kind of uses her affections to his advantage. It's really not a healthy relationship, unfortunately.
Yeah, like, I like Sadie's character, but I really don't like Lars, and they explore this a couple of times, and honestly, some of my least favorite episodes, the basically the one with Lars getting pranked with the donut at the end, because the whole point was him being a dick the entire episode, and the one where they get stuck on this other world, and they start to fall in love, and it turns out to be something that she planned the entire time, and Lars was just being a dick the entire time. Like, they don't really have a lot of good episodes together, and honestly, I could do with this show dropping Lars, because my two least favorite characters in the show are Lars and Ronaldo, and you know what? In small doses, Ronaldo's okay.
Oh god, you like Ronaldo over Lars? God.
I would take a crazy conspiracy theorist over Lars, because you know what? He's funny. He may have some really horrible episodes, but him talking about snake people or Sneeple is funny. Him bringing up the idea, the arguments over dubs and subs is funny. Lars isn't funny.
Like, there's so much I want to say right now. Let's just put it this way. By the time later seasons roll around, your opinions are going to be totally reversed. I guarantee you.
We'll see. But speaking of Ronaldo is this crazy conspiracy theorist who works at the Fryman's restaurant. Basically, they make fries. And they all have hair that's shaped like fries. It's weird. And he's the crazy conspiracy theorist in the town. He basically, like, uncovers everything. And at first, he's pretty harmless. He has a blog called Keep Beach City Weird, and he talks about all the strange things that happen in the middle of nowhere. But then he gets an episode, and it kind of sucks, where he basically kidnaps Steven, because he finds out that all the stuff that's weird going on in the town is all because of Steven, and he starts having a freak out. So Steven puts on a snake costume to make him get back into his passions again. And what does he do? He chains Steven up.
God.
And he starts going on a crazy rant and films it. And he can't seem to see that Steven is in a costume. And he goes on this whole thing about how everyone's just a snake person in disguise. And I know you want to go off on this tangent about how, like, he really predicted the things with the gems and whatnot at the end. I don't know. I didn't like him in that episode. I didn't like him some of the other episodes. All I know that in small doses, I think he's okay.
I'm sorry. I flat out fucking hate Ronaldo. Like, God. Like, you haven't seen the later episodes I have. Like, there are Ronaldo episodes later on that just solidify my hatred for him. It's just, I really hate the end of, like, his big introductory episode, because even though he's been proven to be wrong about this stuff, like, the characters for some reason feel so bad for him that they make up new things for him to obsess over. Like, instead of allowing him to, you know, move on, find some other new, healthier form of, like, you know, media to obsess over. And he just continues to be this delusional figure who thinks, you know, he's the chosen one in this big grand scheme of things that are being hidden from him, and that only he has the answers. And, like, he's just a self-entitled twat, and I fucking hate him. Like, he is my most despised character on the show. Like, I know you said that he's funny in some regards, and maybe he is, but his actions are just absolutely despicable. I cannot stand him.
I can't defend any of his actions, because, to be honest, He almost killed people like 3 times.
Yeah, he could have killed Lars. There was an episode the horror club where, at first it seems like Ronaldo's actually going to be decent in this episode because he's like a horror fan and he has like all these like top-notch horror films and everything. But then like this gem that's been like attached to this building starts like haunting them and this going after Lars and everything. He ends up taking Sadie instead, and Ronaldo just freaks the fuck out and just throws Lars into the creature's mouth. And it's like, had that been an actual live creature, Lars would be dead right now. And granted, Lars is, just as awful, but still, Ronaldo could have straight up committed murder. Like,
and
you can't forgive that.
They try to bring it back a little bit because they give us the backstory about how they used to be friends, but because Ronaldo was so weird, his cool kid persona was in jeopardy, and there's some really good, like, tension there. But yeah, both of them are deplorable characters, and honestly, I can't really stand much from either of them. But yeah, so those are my least favorite characters in the town. Best characters in the town, probably Jenny and the cool kids, especially Sour Cream.
Yeah, he's so cool. I love his voice. It's like so mellow. And it's like, and I like Buck. He's like Garnet. He's just like so stoic, and I like the episode he gets like where he's like doing things in the name of art, but then like he realizes that he's embarrassing people in the process and draws it back. Like we get some great cool kid episodes later down the line. So I'm really excited for you to watch that.
Oh yeah, another character I hate, Onion.
Oh my god, Onion.
Okay, there's a weird aspect to this show. There are definitely some really weird episodes, especially filler episodes in the first half. One of them is the aforementioned Frybo, where like that gave me nightmares. Another one that we mentioned was the one where Steven kind of like ages, where, because he gets kind of upset about birthdays, he starts aging rapidly. Those are weird episodes. But the weirdest of the early season is revolving around this character called Onion, and he doesn't speak. He's mute. He never speaks.
I wouldn't say that, but whatever, go ahead.
Okay, well, in the episodes that I have seen, he doesn't talk. Would that be accurate?
Right, it would be fairly accurate. Although he does sort of talk with his dad a bit. Like, they have a weird language. It's like, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, but we mostly hear his dad talk in that language. I don't remember hearing Onion talk in his language. Anyway, they're both weird. His father's a boat captain, doesn't talk correctly. Onion always just stares and steals people's shit. And in this one episode, he steals Steven's... what guy is it? Like, it's one of the guys. He has action figures called Ranger Guy. He steals Ranger Guy, and he offers to trade Onion for his Ranger Guy because he thinks it's Onion's. So he gets a duplicates a whole bunch of guys to give for Ranger Guy. Finds out that Onion just wants a duplicator, so he trades for the Ranger Guy, which he finds out is his. So he goes back, and he finds Onion duplicating everything. He goes mad with power, and it's the weirdest fucking episode. I hate Onion, because he's a villain in the making. He is Gunter levels of evil.
I will admit, yeah, Onion is like an evil motherfucker, but I can't help but find just entertainment in his evilness. It's weird. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a very off-putting character just because he has a weird design. He doesn't really talk. Like, he does, like, such, like, awful shit. Like, he wastes food, which I don't get. And, like, he's always screwing over Steven. Like, he's one of the few people you see Steven, like, actively be, like, aggravated at, like, on a consistent basis just because he keeps pulling, like, such stunts. And that's not that's not the end of what we'll see from him. There are like more disturbing Onion episodes later on. We do see other aspects of Onion though, I will say, like that, kind of draw back the evilness a bit. But yeah, like Yeah, Onion's a little bastard. I will not deny that.
Yeah, like, I think the biggest problem I have with Onion, he does not mesh with the rest of the show. Artistically, pacing wise, thematically, like, none of the stuff that he does meshes with the show.
I guess. As I said, you'll have to watch more episodes with him to make that call.
Okay, alright. It's a foreshadowing thing. Shut up, Kat. I know you've seen all the episodes.
Sorry.
Um,
There's also mention
So-
of Mr. Smiley. Like, I know he doesn't play any big part, and he doesn't show up that often, but I do find, like, entertainment in the fact that he's voiced by Sinbad, and that he made this rap video that was basically a parody of the Wendy's rap video.
donuts. Donuts. Donuts.
Hot drinks really get you going.
Hot drinks. I love it. So those are the characters. There's obviously more, and I mean, we could go all day through them, but I think those are the important ones to talk about for the moment. There are other families, and there are other people that show up regularly, but these are the main cast. These are the characters, and for the most part, I think this is a solid cast. I think the main focus, the characters that we focus on, are really good, and they all have something that you can latch onto, especially as we learn more about them in later episodes. Before we talk,
Well, before that, we have to get to at least 3 characters that cause, like, the biggest changes in where the show is going.
yes, that's what I was going to dive into.
Sorry.
In addition to those characters, we finally got new characters around the halfway mark. Before we get into them, though, I have to talk about how the show was structured up until this point. The first half of the show is, as we've said, a monster of the week type show. We get, a monster each episode, and it's attacking. They take care of it. They stick something in a bubble, and they put it in the sanctum. Everything changes in the episode Ocean Gem. We find out that all the creatures that they've been fighting up until this point have been corrupted gems. They were once gems, and not all gems are good. And this changes the way you look at it, because it's not just Monster of the Week anymore. It's them fighting a war against gems who have been corrupted. And they don't kill them, they put them aside until they can uncorrupt them. And I'm wondering if Steven has the power to do that. But the first half of the show, I was kind of ready to write off certain things until I saw what that meant in Ocean Gem, because we know now that everything that they've been doing up until that point has different context.
Yeah. Pretty much everything changed with the introduction of one certain character, Lapis Lazuli. So Lapis is a gem that was actually imprisoned inside of a mirror that Pearl happened to come across, like, years ago. And at first, she says that the mirror is just this device that can show you whatever it is you want to see, like, think the magic mirror from Beauty and the Beast. However, the mirror doesn't work for them. So Steven takes it, and he starts messing around with it, and he discovers that the mirror actually does listen to him. And in fact, the mirror actually starts communicating with him. And when he reveals this to the crystal gems, they start to panic and want to take it back, but Steven actually goes against their wishes and takes the gem that's attached to the mirror off, and it forms Lapis Lazuli, who I wouldn't say is corrupted, more like she's, like, defective because her gem is cracked. Mm-hmm. And she's basically this gem that has been imprisoned, I want to say around the time of the war. And so she's been that way for, like, thousands of years, and naturally she has a grudge. And so she fights against the crystal gems. She actually wins and escapes. And then the next episode, she summons all of the water from from the Earth's oceans and creates this giant ass pillar projecting herself up into space. And all with the purpose of trying to get herself closer to Homeworld. Like, that is how fucking powerful she is, even with her gem cracked.
Mm-hmm. And, like, I really like Lapis. I love her design. Steven heals her and sends her on her way to Homeworld. And then we get the idea that there's something more going on. It's not just them fighting corrupt gems, but why weren't they allowing her to get to Homeworld? And it becomes this mystery of what is Homeworld? What's going on there? What's wrong with it? And so it's like, ever since that two-parter, everything changed. Everything changed when the Ocean Gem attacked.
Everything changed when the Water Nation attacked.
But that's the thing, like, when I saw that episode, that's when I really grew invested in the show. And I was intrigued after a bit, but it was that episode where things changed, and I suddenly realized that everything up until this point was not filler. It was pretty much leading up to this reveal. Granted, it is a good build-up to a reveal, but that first half is kind of a slog in places to get through, because not everything is enjoyable. Like I mentioned, the Frybo and all that other... Basically, there's several unpleasant episodes to watch. But when we get to that reveal halfway through the season, that's when I started to really get invested. I like Lapis Lazuli as a character. We don't delve too much into her, because she's more like kind of a means to an end so far. Like she's there to explain what's going on with the corrupt gems. She explains a little bit more about what happens with a cracked gem, and you know what happens when they, like, we learn that Pearl and Amethyst and Garnet are not always telling Steven the truth. And I was a little bit upset that he didn't ask more, but then again, like, Steven's a kid and he was more worried about his healing powers. I can get that, but like, this episode really opens the doors to things, and we only get hints in bits and pieces about this war that the gems fought and why. And that's when we get like stuff like On the Run, which explains about kindergartens and how like not all gems were good. And we learn that Pearl, Amethyst, Rose, and Garnet were the only people who stood against the gems to protect the Earth. And they are the ones who destroyed the warp pads. They're the ones who are pretty much stopping the gems from attacking the world. And that changes pretty much everything.
Yeah, that is until the episode Warp Tour, when we find out that one of the warps has actually been fixed by a new gem called Peridot.
Which leads us to that new character. Like, Peridot, we don't learn too much about here, but when she first showed up, I loved her design. She very much operates in a more alien style, because she has a lot of floating technology and stuff that, like, is kind of attached but not, because a lot of her, like, gem tech is separated in the middle, almost like it's using magnetism or something like that. She's an interesting character. Like, I don't know too much about her, but when she first appeared, I'm like, oh, she has this very mysterious presence. I didn't really get an evil vibe from her. She just doesn't like her stuff being broken.
Which is understandable.
Because they keep breaking her stuff, and she says, like, oh, why must you keep breaking my stuff? So she's the one who keeps investigating the warps. Then she goes to the kindergarten to try to reactivate it, and they shut it down, and she finds out that they're on the planet. So she comes with another character called Jasper, who is a dick.
Yeah, Jasper, she a dick. Jasper's a major dick. But yeah, Jasper is basically a brute Like, she believes the whole mission of escorting Peridot and Lapis to Earth is, like, beneath her, and she, like, looks down the crystal gems as, like, no threat or anything. But things change once she realizes that Steven has Rose Quartz gem. Suddenly, that's the thing that sets her off. Because it turns out the whole reason she came to Earth was to look for Rose Quartz. And we'll learn about that later on, but let's just say there's some beef there. Like, don't get me wrong, like, Jasper is definitely a threat, and she's, you know, definitely a bully and everything, but, oh man, there's a lot going on there. But, yeah, well, what we see, like, she is definitely powerful. Like, she manages to defuse Garnet with that stabilizer thing. She, like, headbutts Steven into oblivion, and just, we don't see it, but she takes down Pearl and Amethyst, like, with ease. Like, she is, like, at that point, the most legit threat we've seen on the show. Like, possibly about as strong as Lapis. Like, just about. But, yeah, I love her fight with Garnet, like, because now that they're on equal ground and she doesn't have the destabilizer, like, you see just, you know, the full capacity of their strengths. I do like the creators mentioned that they based her powers on Sonic the Hedgehog, which you can kind of tell when she, like, rolls up and spins really fast. And, but I think the part at the end, though, the big shocking twist, aside from finding out that Garnet was a fusion, was when after the fight, the ship that they were kidnapped on, crashes down to Beach City, and everyone survived, of course, like no casualties or anything. Jasper's ready to continue fighting, but at this point, she doesn't think that she's able to beat them, and wants somebody to fuse with. So who happens to be left? Lapis. She manages to convince Lapis to fuse with her into this giant monstrosity. And you're thinking, oh shit, like, things are going to go down now. Like, this is the end for the crystal gems. But Lapis turns it around and traps her in the fusion and drags her to the bottom of the ocean. And it's like the, like, scariest shit ever, because it's like, oh my god. Like, how powerful is Lapis? Like, the kids, like, capture someone like Jasper, like, holy shit.
Honestly, Lapis is probably one of the strongest that we've seen thus far, and I'm not even sure she used her full power. Like, there's a lot of we don't know about these three gems. These three girls, like, they arrive, they cause some trouble, but they really seem like there's something bigger going on. They mentioned Yellow Diamond. And like there's going to be much more going on. So a lot of this stuff is like set up for what's happening later. But yeah, like the villains are really well handled. Like, at first you think, oh, it's just a Monster of the Week show, but there's more to it. The villains are deep and engaging, and when we actually get to a bare knuckle brawl, dear God, Garnet versus Jasper is one of the more epic fights in the show, and they're like being hurled DBZ style into different parts of the ship, and Jasper gets hurled into like the engine of the ship and stuff like that. Like, the fight is really damn impressive. So overall, I think the characters for the most part are really great, both heroes and villains. There's some problems, but overall I enjoyed them. Now, before we touch upon the next part, I will give it over to Kat for her musical interlude as she sings the montage theme song of the series.
Steven, why do you have to look up to her? Aside from in a literal sense, don't you know that a power that big comes with a bigger expense? And can't you see that she's out of control and overzealous? I'm telling you for your own good and not because I can show you how to be strong in the real way. And I I don't want to see your gut. I want to see your guts. I can show you how to be strong in a real way, and I know that we can be strong in a real way. And I want to inspire you. I want to be your rock, and when I talk, it lights a fire in you. I want to inspire you. I want to be your rock, and when I talk, it lights a fire in you.
And that was very nice. Very nice.
Why, thank you.
So we've talked about the story. We've talked about the characters. We talked about how much the music in the show rocks. It's catchy. It's something that we can really get behind, and we've sung some of it because we love it so much. It's very inspiring. Now it's time to talk about our favorite and least favorite episodes of the show. Starting with you, Kat. What are your least favorite episodes of the show?
Least favorite episodes. Well, I think the first one that rubbed me the wrong way was Frybo, just because of how creepy that freaking mascot thing was, and the fact that it came to life and was basically shoving fries down people's throats. That freaked me out. I didn't particularly care for cat fingers either, just because, you know, it was like Steven turning into this like monstrous like cat hybrid thingy. It's just like seeing his body distort as like all of these like cat creatures were forming. It was like, ugh, it was disgusting. What else? Onion Tray, just because, you know, that whole episode was like so frustrating because you kind of saw where it was going, and you just seeing like Onion being so freaking evil and just taking advantage of Steven was just like, it was amusing, but at the same time it's like, oh, you bastard. And what else? Let's see. I didn't care for Joking Victim because, again, it shows Lars at his most like dickishness, with, you know, showing just how blatant he is and how he takes advantage of Sadie's like affection toward him. And you kind of can't help but like take some joy in the fact that he gets like injured from the fire flakes, but, you know, just seeing just how much of an asshole he is like really makes the episode unenjoyable. It's the same thing with Keep Beach City Weird, the introduction of Ronaldo, because again, you see just how much of an like asshole the character of Ronaldo is. And what else? Is it Horror Club? I think would have been cool if you didn't have both Ronaldo and Lars there, just because like them together, like them separate is bad enough. Them together just makes it that much worse.
I can pretty much agree with that list. I mean,
yeah. But other than that, you know, nothing else really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, there are, like, some annoyances with, like, the earlier episodes of, like, Steven Universe, particularly, like, with Cheeseburger Backpack. Like, you could tell that Steven was going to end up forgetting the statue. But, I mean, the journey there made it enjoyable enough. So, like, the other ones I felt were more offending. But for the most part, like, you know, I can still watch these again and find some enjoyment in them.
Yeah, and I think, to me, the biggest problem is that a lot of these weaker episodes took place in the first half, and when the show is really trying to find its footing, and not really finding it for a little portion of it, and so, like, the stuff like Frybo and the Onion episode, and the one where he's aging, and, like, there's a lot of weird things back to back. I think it's an okay episode if you're an adult, but the episode where he first gets into Rose's room, if you're a kid, I think that's disturbing.
It kind of is. Because the thing is, like, you don't really realize it at first that, you know, he had not left the room, and to see everybody act the way they do and all the glitchiness, like, you do quickly figure it out, but, like, if you're a kid in that situation, like, that would be horrifying. Like,
Yeah, it's like watching this as an adult, I'm like, this is a great horror episode. If I was a kid, I would be crapping my pants. Pants to be darkened. All right, let's talk about our favorite episodes, and then we'll give our overall thoughts and finish this up.
okay.
My favorite episodes, I love the Stevani episode. I really do enjoy that one.
Hmm.
I love On the Run because that's like the one big Amethyst episode. Obviously, I love the two-parter for the ending. But I think one of my favorites is there's two. One where Steven finds the tape.
Right, Lion 3 straight to video.
Yeah, Lion 3 straight to video, where, like, basically Lion shows him that there's another world inside his main, and he finds a tape where we see Rose Quartz, and she talks to him. It's a really, really wonderful, beautiful episode. Not just because Dogcopter is there, because Dogcopter is amazing, but it just, like, that one made me cry at the end. But I also really love the one where they show how they met. Kids, this is how I met your mother.
Oh yeah, story for Steven.
5 seasons later.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite episodes too, of how Greg met Rose. Because up to that point, the only time we've seen, like, you know, genuine, like, interaction from Rose, like, herself, was in the videotape. But in this, we see, like, how, you know, she interacts with Greg, and you can tell from, like, the get-go that they were meant to be. It's really, like, compelling, their whole relationship. And we get to see more of that later down the line, and we get to learn more about Rose. And trust me when I say she's going to become an essential and really, you know, intriguing character.
Not to mention the song that Greg sings. I love it. I love it to death.
Oh, yeah.
So those are some of my favorite episodes. What about you, Kat?
Pretty much the ones that you said. I also do like Tiger Millionaire, just for the campiness of all the wrestling and everything.
Tiger Millionaire, can I have your autograph? You couldn't afford it. Tiger Millionaire is a jerk because he hurt me specifically.
I like Giant Woman because it's the first time we see fusion, and I do like the fusion of Opal. It's pretty cool. Plus, I like the song in it, Giant Woman. All I
want to do is see you turn into a Super Saiyan.
Who wish? What else? Is it? Oh yeah, I like Rose's scabbard a lot. Because we find out so much about Pearl and her relationship to Rose, and it's really heartbreaking. Like, that whole part at the end where they go to the spot where she first talked to Rose about starting the rebellion, and how she's having, like, that mock conversation between herself and a projection of Rose, is like, it's so heartbreaking. And as I said, when you learn the later context for it, it just makes it that much more devastating. It's like... And the fact that you see, like, Steven trying so hard to, like, comfort her through all this, it's just, it's like, the feels.
Oh, another good episode is the test, where Steven is upset because he realized he failed one of the earlier tests in Cheeseburger Backpack. And at first, I was a little bit upset with the episode because they don't actually give him a test. Like, they basically make this course that he can't possibly fail, and he finds out, and he's going to tell him off, but he overhears them saying they don't know what they're doing. And first of all, this is really, really important because no matter how old you are, nobody really knows what they're doing. They're trying the best they can. And the fact that they're like, Steven's the first human gem hybrid. Nobody knows what's going on. They're just trying to do the best they can. Even Garnet doesn't know what's going on. I love that speech, and how Steven, who is going to tell them off, just goes back and says how amazing the course was. Like, he helps them, and I love that.
And I sort of like a winter forecast. Like, it kind of goes into, like, Groundhog territory, where you see all, like, the different, like, outcomes for Steven if he decides to, like, escort Connie back home, or if he decides to, like, or if he decides to prevent her from going home or delay her trip from going home, and you see all the possibilities that come about it, and like, they're not necessarily like funny, but it's just like weird just to see them go further and further back, like, with every single choice he makes. I just thought that was kind of cool.
I'm a cherry man. All right, I think it's time to give our overall thoughts. We've been talking for quite a while. Kat, what are your final thoughts on season 1?
I really do like it. I mean, I of course love the second half the best, because that's when they finally get their footing and finally pick a direction with where they decide to go with the show. Like I said, the first half is okay. It's rather aimless. It's like, I mean, it's basically world building. You know, you get introduced to the characters, you know, get introduced to their surroundings, the townspeople. You find out how everyday life works and everything. And then when they start introducing the new characters and the underlying mystery and the, you know, the revelation of Homeworld and what that means for the crystal gems, like, that's when it starts getting interesting. And like I said, there are bits of foreshadowing here and there that come into play later on. So I really do like that. It's a decent build up, is what I'm saying. Like, obviously the later seasons are much, much better, but I think that this is a good setup for what is going to be a really good show.
For me, the best way I have found to describe it is it's like the early seasons of One Piece versus the Grand Line. The first half of this season are a lot like early One Piece in that while they're good, they're not always the best. They're not always on point. And it was taking a while for the creator to get their ideas together. But when it does click into place in that halfway point and you actually get to the really good half, it's like it changes the way you look at the show. Because, again, I initially thought this was just going to be an aimless show. I didn't see what was so special about it, but it's the same thing as Adventure Time. The first season is where it's not the best, and it's not where they show their best material, but it's about building up this world. And when they bring out their A game, really amazing episodes happen. I've seen the level of storytelling they can bring up, and I'm intrigued. I'm very much on board for this show, and I'm looking forward to season 2. I'm looking forward to learning more of this mystery, because now I gotta know. Now I'm invested. I'm on that train, and I'm not going to derail the train. So we'll eventually reconvene for season 2. I'm not sure when that's going to be. We have other stuff to watch and whatnot. And we also probably, eventually going to see Starverses and other shows and whatnot. But for right now, season 1 was pretty good. I liked the second half a lot more than the first half, but retroactively, I think the first half is better because of the way the second half is handled.
Yeah, like, I am really looking forward to showing you more episodes, because, like I said, season 2 is where it really, starts to shine, and you get, like, some of the best episodes. As I said, at the time of this recording, this show has only aired up to the episode A Single Pale Rose. There is another arc coming up, five episodes. I haven't seen that yet. Please don't spoil that for me or for Zen or for anybody else. Thank you very much. But like I said, we will try to, get to the episodes as they come, and until eventually we manage to catch up to the show itself. It'll take a while, but trust us, we will eventually get there. And we'll try to do we'll try to review the seasons in their entirety as opposed to episode by episode, because if any of you fans have been watching the same as me, you know how long those hiatuses are. So yeah, we're just gonna keep it self-contained with the seasons.
Honestly, to me, more than any show that we've talked about, it makes more sense to talk about this as a season format, because there's just so many episodes. Like, because it's split into two, there's 52 episodes in this one season. I don't have enough to talk about to make 52 separate podcasts. I just don't. I'm talented. I can do it with DuckTales. I can't do it with this.
No. I mean, granted, like I said, they have huge hiatuses. Like, they'll show, like, 5 episodes for, like, a week, and then they'll be gone for, like, several months before getting back to it again. So, theoretically, we could catch up with it, no problem. But I think it's better just to see the overarching season. Like, that's just my opinion.
For me, it's easier to see how things change from the beginning to the end, because this is definitely a case of things changing from the start of the season to the end of the season, and you learning things and more foreshadowing and catchy songs and some really cool one-liners, like, you know, saying to Lion, why don't you tell me you can do the things you do? It is a quotable show. Not as quotable as some of the other shows that I've seen, but it's quotable. I like it. With all that said, I'm Zenith will Rule.
I'm Kat McBerry.
And we will see you next time when we dive into Season 2 in Retrospective. And we go through and maybe I actually learn about everything going on. I know a lot of people were really looking forward to this because I was, you know, posting on Twitter and Facebook, and a lot of people really like Steven Universe. A lot of people actually really like the cover of Stronger Than You that I put out. I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful for all your love and support. If you like the covers that we did in this episode, please let us know, because I want to do more. With all that being said, have a good one, guys, and make sure to be kind to your lesbian space rocks.
And remember, everyone, you are not one person. You are not two people. You are an experience. Make sure you're a good experience. Now go have fun!
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.